trolling Senator Elizabeth Warren as a snake, and in post after post, labeling Mayor Pete Buttigieg a rat. Two victims of this tell CNN they were so afraid of the online attacks they faced, they don't even want us to describe the circumstances for fear it would start up again. They both just questioned the politics of Bernie Sanders in a public setting, and their personal lives were exposed and attacked.
Well, just what Nick said, I think that's right. I mean, there is no Democratic establishment anymore. There's not even a Democratic Party anymore. The Democratic Party is a meaningless notion that the party, like the Republican Party, has been hollowed out and privatized to a large extent. There are Democratic elites, and so when we're talking about the Democratic establishment, we're really talking about a number of, a bunch of people that Nick also knows well, which really means Democratic donors.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
This election is the most important in the modern history of this country.
The election in 2020, without hyperbole, is going to be the most important election this country has undergone in over 100 years. Not a joke.
This November's elections are more important than any I can remember in my lifetime, and that includes when I was on the ballot.
There are just 8 days left in what is the most important election of our lifetime.
Where did you guys come to a conclusion about why Clinton had such a hard time just owning that she did something wrong with the email server?
You know, I know that Russia and other forces would love us to have a debate. This is exactly what they want. They want us to have a debate about the internal structure of Hillary's campaign, what's true, what's not true. And I'm just not going to play that. I'm sorry.
Yes, we came, we saw, we died.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It's like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
You know, people have said, if you look at, for example, the heat that ended up around the bend the knee, Colin Kaepernick. Mm-hmm. Many smart people have said it actually was not a thing. The Russian bots started taking that. Yes.
But I saw my mom. My mom is the strongest woman I know.
She should be running.
This is not about.
If you're like me, one of the millions suffering from pain caused by migraine, Nurtec ODT may help. It's the only medication that can treat a migraine when it strikes and prevent migraine attacks.
Trump and the Republicans lose on Tuesday, and if they lose badly, it's not going to be because of the left, whatever that means. It's not because of the 50 Antifa black mask guys who roam around the United States breaking windows and committing mayhem, most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Rudy Giuliani, there's only three things he mentioned in a sentence: a noun and a verb and 9/11. I mean,
I'm going to try to get through this. Thank you for what you did 3 years ago today.
And I went to Wall Street in December of 2007, before the big crash that we had, and I basically said, cut it out.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin.
If we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
I can't do it.
We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet, welcome to what I'm affectionately calling episode 104 of the Polyticks show. And this episode is about what I like to refer to as orchestrated enthusiasm. And you're going to see why I refer to it as that in a few minutes. But I want to kind of just give you a real quick personal update, just in case you give a shit. I have been, dealing with the economy. And my goal was to do a lot more of these shows, but I kind of started out trying to do this almost daily show thing, and it didn't really have legs. So I'm just going to stick to what I do, which is, I like these Sunday shows because it gives me the week to kind of put stuff together. And my whole idea was, it's tough for me between working my day job and the other projects I have going to edit the clips of these streams. So I thought, you know what, I'll just do more live streams and make thumbnails for them and, make them more targeted or specific, I guess, to different issues. But that didn't kind of work out the way I'd hoped. And, this channel is going to continue to grow. I'm going to continue to do these broadcasts. I'm going to continue to talk to y'all and vent my frustrations about the political system. But, the format that occurs in may be different, from day to day, or maybe different from week to week. And I appreciate you for sticking with me despite all that. Thank you very much. And welcome again to episode 104 of the Polyticks show.
Yo, we here now. Stupid.
So I wanted to start out today by talking about, what is, I think, the biggest news right now, which happens to be tariffs. And my take on these tariffs is pretty simple. The people who are the most upset and, kind of panicked about these tariffs tend to be the people who have literally been wrong about everything for the last, 20 years. And as someone who's working class, who's probably like a lot of you, barely scraping by from paycheck to paycheck, when I see this kind of stuff, there's a schadenfreude about it. The investor class, or the people that throw money around and literally have thrown their weight around in politics and have influenced politics, to see them panicking the way they are, I mean, that's worth more to me than, a lot. Let's put it that way. I don't have specifics, but it's worth a lot to see that. And I don't think that the people who are, against the tariffs really get that. But here's the other thing. I want to say this just mostly to people in my circles, and that is, don't believe the hype. Okay. I see a lot of people on the left and in, progressive circles kind of buying the panic over this. And it's like, these are the same people who's tried to sell you Joe Biden as president. I say this constantly, but literally tried to sell you a corpse as president. And then when that didn't work, tried to sell you Kamala Harris as president, and before that sold you all kinds of nonsense, the same neocons that supported the Iraq war. All these people are they're always wrong about everything. Why would they be right about this? And I get it. There's a lot of people that are mad at Elon Musk and mad at Trump. And I will also say this before we get into this. I see this tendency a lot with people on the left to like dunk on the MAGA people, like, ha ha, you got fooled again. You voted for Trump and he's not doing what you wanted. Ha ha, you're a dummy. That is not really what happened. And it's kind of like, it's kind of lame, because 90%, most of the MAGA people, a large portion. Now, listen, there are Trump cultists. There are the people who are like, no matter what, he's Jesus or whatever. There are those people, and those people are dumb. But the vast majority of the MAGA people kind of hedge their bets. Like, they're like, hey, look, this is the best we got. Like, they're not. Dave Smith is a great example. I see like a lot of people in my circles like, oh, Dave Smith, you supported Trump, and now you dummy. No, Dave Smith didn't support Trump. Dave Smith basically said, hey, given the two viable options, Kamala and Trump, Trump is the lesser of two evils, which is what most smart people said. Do Dissidents said that. Jimmy Dore said that. You know, people on the right and left said that. So this idea that like, oh, like we're going to dunk on MAGA now because you thought, like, it's a lot more complicated than that. And, I'm not saying we should all jump on the Trump train and praise Trump either, but it's not as simple as, you guys are dumb and it's not working out. The guy's been in office for like 60 days now. So there's still time. And, I'm not naive, but I'm also not, like vindictive against people who voted for Trump because of desperation, out of desperation. A lot of people voted for Trump out of desperation and the type of schadenfreude I just described, watching these cunts on CNBC panic and lose their minds over tariffs. That's worth a lot more to the average working class person, watching the MSNBC crowd clutch their pearls and freak out than anything the Democrats were offering. Let's put it that way. So Matt Taibbi and Walter Kern have a weekly show called America This Week, and they touched on this a little bit, and I think they made some good points. So let's watch a little bit of this and talk about it, shall we? So this is them talking about this guy, Bob Diamond, who is, a CNBC guy, and just
let's look at a couple pieces of video that kind of speak to what you're talking about. First is Bob Diamond, who is one of the lesser known villains of the financial crisis era. He's the former head of Barclays. He's from Concord, Massachusetts, if I'm not mistaken, where I went to high school. And
at first I thought he might be like Jamie Dimon's cousin, but then I realized it's Bob Diamond, not Diamond. But all these financial oligarchs have very rich sounding names.
He said this was the biggest act of economic self-harm in recent history.
Joining us right now to talk more about this is Bob Diamond. He's the CEO of Atlas Merchant Capital. He's also the former CEO of Barclays. And Bob, lay it on us. What do you think?
Lay it on us, Bob.
Becky, I think this is profound. It's profound an act of economic self-harm as I think I've seen in my lifetime, or at least in my career. 11% of the U.S. economy is imports. 40% of those imports aren't finished goods; they're parts. That gets confusing, but I think you would know what I mean when I say that has a big impact on the supply chain, because it gets very, very confusing. And if this is sustained or permanent, then it would require pretty massive change in terms of the supply chain. So,
oh no, the supply chain. So the average working stiff, hears this and goes, oh no, the people who fucking outsourced all of our jobs to China for cheap labor and import all their shit and make a bunch of money off it are upset about the disruption in the supply chain. Oh no, what are we going to do? But let's keep going.
I think the impact is huge. 11% of our economy is like 3.3 trillion. That's the imports. And when we look at other periods, people point to 1930. At that point, imports were, I think, around 3.5% of the economy.
Before Smoot-Hawley.
It's profound, and it's self-imposed.
Right. So there's Bob Diamond, and
So when we got COVID a few years ago, I'm sorry, was he out there telling us that it was the beginning of a new depression because the stock market reached similar levels? and all so that we could not get sick.
So this
these
is
guys
real quick,
predicting
real
a
quick,
new
real quick here.
depression.
This is a
I
point
remember
I
when
want to make that I make a lot to people on Twitter about the state of the stock market. Okay. And if you're an investor type person, I'm not a big investment person, but I had stock options at one of my corporate jobs back in the day. So I have a marginal understanding of the market, and I do have some stocks. And this is the thing that I think is funny about the people, taking joy in the downfall of the NASDAQ, So I want you to look at this. This is the past month in the stock market, and you can see, the peaks and valleys here. Let me make this bigger for you. You can see the peaks and valleys. So this is 1 month. I'll look at 1 month of the stock market, right? This is the NASDAQ composite. And it's red. It's down. Oh, look at this big dip when the tariffs were announced, and then it jumped back up, which is market manipulation, but that's a whole other thing. But now look at the stock market when you pull back to a 5-year picture. See that? This is 5 years ago. This is today. So, I mean, come on. This is what the stock market does. It's not even as low as it was back in 2023, so it's disingenuous. You look at year to date. Oh my God, that looks terrible. Then you go to 5-year. Oh, it's a normal disruption in the market. So people are being disingenuous and using, the same people who tried to sell you Joe Biden as the corpse president are trying to get you freaked out about the stock market to make you mad at Trump. When the reality is, it's not really that big of a deal in the long term. It might be shitty for day traders or whatever, but in the long term, greater scheme of things, it's pretty meaningless, as Kern is kind of pointing out here. But let's go.
Banks were failing not too long ago. Remember, under Biden, the banks started, the First Republic and other banks, they almost wanted to make it a crime to speak negatively of the U.S. economy. They were out there saying, if you're tweeting, if you're on social media predicting doom or saying, pull your money out, you're not patriotic. Now it's the exact opposite. They have exposed themselves in a way I just can't even imagine. And now they're going to be hung by their own petard because Trump portrayed this as a workers' revolution. He really did. He has been painstaking in saying this is not just a matter of fairness, it's a matter of bringing back jobs. And
yes, so the question is going to be whether that's possible or whether in the economy that we now have that has become over the years so completely integrated with the rest of the world, whether you actually can do that. Now, what we have seen recently is that when we thought cutting Russia off from the rest of the world financially would do them enormous harm, it actually massively revitalized their industrial economy and made them much stronger than it was before.
So that's a great point that no one is, except Taibbi, is bringing up. What we did to Russia by isolating and sanctioning them actually made them a stronger economy. So, like I said, I don't take this fear mongering over the stock market seriously at all. But let's kind of finish this out by showing you, this is kind of what they say about this crisis up here. And I think it's also pretty relevant. Listen to this.
Than theirs, but they still used to make their own cars, their own TVs, their own, and their own agricultural products and all this other stuff. And they did have, an epidemic of deaths and despair. They had a statistically significant number of people die in industrial accidents during that time, which is the kind of thing that, in America, we're getting there with opiate deaths and things like that, right? So now that this has all happened, and whatever you think of the Trump policy, and whether you think it's going to work or not, this tariffs idea, what makes me nervous is all these people who were very for this plan of exporting those pesky workers and collective bargaining agreements overseas, siphoning off the profits, monetizing them through stock buybacks. And now, when this is happening, suddenly it's a crisis, historical crisis. And we have people like Bill Gates telling us that even if there's no point in trying to bring the jobs back because we weren't meant to work, actually. And this is,
humans weren't meant to work, or just Americans.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how recent this video is, but Gates has been saying a lot of things about how, like.
So I don't know if I pass this point that they make, though, but we'll watch for a minute more. But what they're basically doing here is they're making the point that because of AI and technology, most of these jobs are going to be done by machines. And so at this point, outsourcing them is counterproductive. And that's kind of what Trump's guy Lutnick was saying, although inartfully, is like, hey, we're going to bring these jobs back here because machines are going to be doing most of them. But at least like the jobs will be like Americans that are watching the machines and servicing the machines and making sure the machines are doing it right, and listen, I don't think that's good either, but it's kind of inevitable. And so I think kind of this adjustment, I guess, is necessary. And let's go real quick to the comments. David says, if I was into stock, I'd be super excited for the market to tank. That's how you get in. Exactly. It's a down market. The price of stock is low right now. And again, it's like all these people panicking. You pull back and you look at the big picture. It goes like this. It's always going up. It has dips and dives, but I think, just personally, my personal opinion on this is that it's going to be a good thing long term, but these kind of adjustments are painful to make. And the people that are outsourcing all their shit to China are now going to be forced to figure out, another cheap way to do it. And hopefully, the price of doing it with an AI or a robotic factory here in the United States is similar or less than it is to ship the jobs overseas. So who knows? I don't claim to be an expert on this stuff. I don't claim to, have the best advice or be telling you how to run your business or anything. What I do know is the people who are the most upset about this, again, are the people freaking out the hardest. And, if history is any indicator, we shouldn't listen to those people.
AI is going to revolutionize how we think about work. Let's look at number 17. And this goes along with what you were retweeting about Wang, right?
Wang,
or Andrew? What's
Andrew Yang?
Yeah, Yang. I'm sorry. Saying that
remember him?
Yeah, exactly. Who cares if the jobs come back? They're all going to be AI jobs anyway. There are no jobs to come back. So what's the point? Well, then why move them overseas at this point?
Exactly.
Right?
May as well have them here.
There you go.
Exactly. Why waste all the money transporting stuff across an ocean when we have, similar labor costs and can just build it in our backyard? In fact, I think everybody should have a robot in their garage building everything they need for them, custom.
So that's, I think, again, a point that is not really being picked up on by anyone. And good on Matt and Walter here for making it. These jobs are lost to technology regardless of where they're at. So reshoring them and just using the technology here to do a lot of those jobs is going to be a big thing. And in the meantime, the companies that can't afford the technology or the companies that don't need the technology can bring those jobs back here. And, the market's going to adjust to that. That's just how it is. I mean, what happened before, things obviously got cheaper in the Clinton era when they started outsourcing stuff to China, because at that time it made sense. But now, because of the internet and the way that global economies are working, maybe it doesn't make sense anymore. And it hurts to adjust to that for a certain class of people, but those people are the people who are comfortable, like they can absorb it. So let's move on to another subject that is kind of tariff related, but it's about our good friends in the Middle East, our favorite friends who are currently, it looks like, controlling our foreign policy and a lot of other things in the United States. If you're paying attention at all. And recently their leader came to visit us here in the United States. And here's kind of what that looked like. So Kim Iversen actually did a piece that I want to just play and we can talk about, because she highlighted, again, something that I don't think a lot of people caught in this meeting between President Netanyahu and his dog Trump. And let's watch. This is, I think you're gonna enjoy this a little bit, and we'll talk about it on the other side, if you haven't seen it already. A lot of
Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrived in Washington for what was supposed to be the routine show of alliance, a reaffirmation of the unbreakable bond between the United States and Israel. But that's not what happened, because if you watched closely and if you listened to not just what was said, but what wasn't said, what you saw wasn't unity. It was friction, tension, a recalibration of power. Let's start with Iran. Trump.
So this is a hot take that when I saw this, I went, oh, wow. No one else is really saying this. And you can agree or disagree with it, but I think she brings up some good points. It may be a little subjective, but it's points that I think are relevant that not a lot.
Trump shocked Netanyahu with the announcement that he's beginning negotiations with Iran. Not war, not sabotage, not assassination, but talks.
We're having direct talks with Iran, and they've started. It'll go on Saturday. We have a very big meeting, and we'll see what can happen. And I think everybody agrees that.
So the talks started yesterday, and one thing, if you know anything about Trump, if you've paid attention, he likes to talk a big game, right? He likes to talk real tough, because that's the art of the deal. So he comes out the gate like, Iran, you better watch out. We're going to get you. It's not going to be so good for you, Iran, or whatever. What did he say? Something like that. But as Kim's going to explain here, the fact that he came out and announced negotiations and didn't just kind of kiss Ben's ass the whole time is a good sign. And I mean, listen, he did still kind of, I just showed you this photo right here. This is from this visit. He did the same thing at the previous visit, but let's keep watching here.
Doing a deal would be preferable to doing the obvious. And the obvious is not something that I want to be involved with, or frankly, that Israel wants to be involved with if they can avoid it. So we're going to see if we can avoid it.
Obvious is not something I want to be involved with. I think Israel would beg to differ on whether or not they want to be involved with.
But it's getting to be very dangerous territory. And hopefully those talks will be successful. And I think it would be in Iran's best interest if they are successful. We hope that's going to happen.
Okay, so to most Americans, that sounds reasonable, right? Rational even. We've spent decades in the Middle East, thousands of lives lost, trillions of dollars burned. Diplomacy should always be on the table, especially with a regional power like Iran. But to Netanyahu, that's not just a disappointment, it's a threat. And you can see it in his body language as he's listening to Trump say, we're going to be opening up negotiations with Iran, and it's starting this weekend. Netanyahu isn't just uncomfortable, he's unnerved, because what Trump is proposing challenges the entire doctrine of Israeli regional strategy. The idea that Iran is an existential threat, a rogue state that can never be reasoned with. That narrative is the foundation of Israeli foreign policy. And if you remove it, the whole structure starts to wobble. And so Netanyahu responded. Here.
So I don't want to get ahead of the news or anything, but in my brief scrolling this morning, what I saw was a proposition that the entire Middle East nuclear disarms, including Iran and Israel as well. Everyone gives up nukes. That might have been just like hippie, flower child language on the, because I don't think anything's been officially announced yet. But that would be interesting if it's true at all. Let me let Kim keep going here.
Here he is. He's actually speaking Hebrew in this, and he is calling for the Libyan model. Let me actually just read for you what he says, because you won't be able to listen to this. If you did, it was in Hebrew anyway. But he says, I've just finished my second visit to the U.S. in 2 months, a very warm visit with my friend, President Donald Trump. You could be impressed from the great closeness and friendship between us, which was expressed in the issues we discussed. First of all, Iran, we agree that Iran will not have nuclear weapons. This can be done by agreement, but only if this agreement is Libyan style. They go in, blow up the installations, dismantle all of the equipment under American
Libyan style, which means the leader of Iran gets a sword up the ass at the end. Is that what Libyan style means? And their country ends up as an open slave market?
Supervision and carried out by America. This would be good. The second possibility that will not be is that they will drag out their talks, and then there is the military option. Everyone understands this. We spoke about it at great length. Are you kidding me? The Libyan model? Let's pause on that. And by the way, carried out by America, blowing up all of their installations, dismantling their equipment, carried out by America. The Libyan model? You mean when Gaddafi voluntarily, Netanyahu wants war, and we're going to find out in the coming months which U.S. president, Netanyahu or Trump, is truly in control of our foreign policy. So Netanyahu didn't just come to Washington to talk about Iran. He came with a second objective, trade. Now, he wanted Trump to lift the 17% tariffs on.
So this is another interesting little sidebar. I actually saw this happen. I saw this reported in the news, but Kim's take on this is actually really good. And it's kind of like one of the nuanced things that Trump said to Netanyahu that I didn't really catch, that when I saw this, I went, oh, this is awesome. This is great. Listen to this.
Israeli imports. It was a calculated ask, leverage the personal relationship, use the diplomatic visit to ease economic pressure. But Trump didn't flinch. Instead, he reminded everyone that Israel receives over $4 billion a year in U.S. military aid.
Do you plan to reduce the tariffs that your government put on Israeli goods? 70%?
On where?
On Israeli goods, 70%.
Well, we're talking about a whole new trade. Maybe not. Don't forget, we help Israel a lot. We give Israel $4 billion a year. That's a lot. Congratulations, by the way. That's pretty good. But we give Israel billions of dollars a year. Billions.
Stuff like this, over time has just really endeared Trump to be like, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Let's just watch that one more time. That's funny as hell. He's like, $4 billion, that's pretty good. It's just so funny. And I think this is why people like Trump so much, is that, the average leader, this is like so off limits. Like, how dare you chuckle with the leader of our beloved Israel like that? How dare you, Trump? It's just so funny.
Forget, we help Israel a lot. We give Israel $4 billion a year. That's a lot. Congratulations, by the way. That's pretty good. But we give Israel billions of dollars a year.
Congratulations, by the way. That's pretty good.
Billions.
So in other words, why should I do you any favors when my taxpayers are already footing your defense budget? So this is where the old alliance starts to crack, not because the friendship is ended, but because the interests are no longer aligned. America is hurting economically, inflation, job losses, rising debt. Trump ran on economic nationalism. The era of free gifts is over. And if that wasn't enough insult and humiliation for Netanyahu, Then came the Erdogan comment. Trump said publicly that he has a very, very good relationship with Erdogan. He said, quote, I happen to like him and he likes me and we've never had a problem. He then turned to Netanyahu and said, any problem that you have with Turkey, I think I can solve. I mean, as long as you're reasonable, you have to be reasonable. No wonder there was no joint press conference after the meeting. It was quietly canceled by the White House. Now, that's not a scheduling conflict. That's not poor coordination. That's a deliberate signal to the world. This meeting did not go well. But if you want to see who still is aligned with Netanyahu.
So that's interesting. And, you know, again, there's a tendency for the people in my circles to dunk on the MAGA people right now and be like, see, ha ha, losers. You voted out of desperation and still got lied to and shafted. It's not the end yet. And, you know, it's like turning and listen, I'm here to call out Trump's bullshit. There's a lot of it, you know, the whole Mahmoud Khalil thing is a line in the sand. It's a red line. But, and I've said this several times in the last couple of weeks, I see a lot of strong pushback against this type of stuff from MAGA, a lot more pushback from MAGA than I would have seen from, say, Kyle Kulinski and, you know, Stephen Colbert when Biden starts a war with Russia. You know, the MAGA people and the MAGA influencer space is a lot more, you know, autonomous. And I feel like, you know, there's plenty of them, of course, that are puppets of Netanyahu, Ben Shapiro and Dave Rubin being examples, maybe Tim Pool even. We're going to get to some Tim Pool stuff later, which I think kind of paints him in a good light. But this next segment is about this exact premise, because some of the biggest opponents and most vocal opponents of the pending war with Iran are MAGA influencers that have the direct ear of not only the president, but the conservative movement. And listen, you know, when I disagree with these people on stuff like deporting people for speech, I will vocally say it, but they're right about this. And Tucker Carlson, I think, you know, I haven't seen him defend Mahmoud Khalil, but he seems like the type of principled guy who would do that. And there are a lot of people in the, you know, alt-right or whatever you want to call it, the new right, the Trump, the MAGA movement, I guess, for lack of a better term, that are vocally in opposition to a war with Iran. So let me show you. This is your boy Glenn Greenwald, and he kind of points out this reality, starting with Charlie Kirk. Let me just jump in right here and let's watch some of this.
It'll work. There are some very well-connected figures in the MAGA movement, meaning well-connected to the White House, who, to their great credit, are sounding the alarm that this is very real, that there's serious talk in the White House about bombing Iran. This is not just a negotiating ploy. And there are people in MAGA saying, this is completely contrary to what we thought we were supposed to be getting. Here's Charlie Kirk on April 3rd. He went on to X and said this, quote, it's going unnoticed because so much other news is happening. Exactly. But he says the war drums are beating again in DC. The warmongers worry this is their last chance to get the white whale they've been chasing for 30 years, an all-out regime change war against Iran. A new Middle East war would be a catastrophic mistake. Our military stockpiles are depleted from...
Pause right here for just a second, because I love that framing that Charlie Kirk is using there. And I'm not a fan of Charlie Kirk at all. He's of all those people, he's probably one of the ones, like him and Ben Shapiro do that thing where they like go debate college kids and they like hand select the dumbest people they can find to show how badass they are when they argue against them. Like they get some purple-haired chick to say that men can have babies and they go dunk on them, which is not difficult to do. So like that side of the Charlie Kirks of the world, I think is kind of ridiculous. But he's winning me over with truths like this, because what he's pointing out is something that Max Blumenthal and Aaron Matei exposed this week at the Gray Zone, that these people, these neocons, were put in the Trump administration by the interests that want these wars to happen. And this isn't some conspiracy theory. This is documented proof that the vassal state in the Middle East that we send billions of dollars to every year controls our politics. They openly talk about it. And here's Charlie Kirk saying Iran is their white whale. These neocons, these dick pigs who have infiltrated every administration. You know, the Bush administration, they completely ran. The Obama administration, they pretty much completely ran too, while we all patted ourselves on the back about how awesome it was that we had a black president. Biden, they completely opened up new, like, you know, I'm not saying, I think Trump likes to paint himself as this, like, you know, I'm the best in the history of the country. It's the best I've ever done. You know, he's always the best. But he did his at first administration, just the tone of it was vastly different than the tone of the Biden administration, the corpse president who was puppeted by the neocons, right? Trump met with North Korea. I remember them fucking freaking out about that. Trump said he would speak to Russia. Trump was, you know, despite the shit that the neocons in his administration did on his behalf, like assassinating Soleimani in Iran, trying to start a war with Iran back then. The stuff they did in Venezuela, trying to install a puppet government there, all that stuff, ridiculous. And I would argue in retrospect, and you've heard Trump talk about this, a lot of the people that he had around him were responsible for this stuff. Now, you see it again with what's going on now. This whole Signalgate thing. Jeff Goldberg, the guy who runs the goddamn Atlantic, was leaked this information to Mike Waltz by Mike Waltz, a well-documented neocon who is, you know, been a creature of Washington along with Jeffrey Goldberg for like the last 30 years, and then pretends he doesn't know the guy. And it's like, just that's the kind of, these are the scumbags. And, you know, it's, I don't know what Trump actually thinks of Mike Waltz. He probably really likes the guy, but that guy is a rat. And Max and Aaron, again, revealed the three biggest rats in the administration by name: John Ratcliffe, Marco Rubio, and Waltz. They're all people that the AIPAC basically said, we groomed these people in Congress to get them in here. Anyway, that was way off the rails, but on the rails too. There's a different like sidebar. So, but let's let Glenn keep reading Charlie Kirk's take here on the neocon dick pigs and their quest for the white whale.
3 years of backing Ukraine, our effort to reshore manufacturing has only just begun and will take years to bear fruit. War would worsen our already immense deficit in national debt. Iran is larger than Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan combined. A war would not be easy and could easily become a calamity. Thanks to President Trump's restraint during his first term, America.
He didn't even bring up the fact that Iran controls a lot of oil and trade routes, and they could shut that shit down and cause all kinds of economic problems as well.
There's a golden opportunity to pull away from Middle East quagmires for good. We shouldn't throw that opportunity away so that some DC has-beens can feel tough by sending young Americans to die yet again.
DC has-beens. That right there, I think, is more telling of the dynamic that's playing out in American politics right now than anything else. DC has-beens. I remember as a Bernie guy when Bernie started winning primaries, especially they never took him seriously in 2015, 2016, but especially in the 2019, 2020 cycle, when Bernie started winning primaries, I was, I volunteered for the campaign. I felt there was a palpable contempt for us from the Democratic consulting class, because they knew if Bernie moved in, if Bernie won power, their days were numbered. These are the James Carvilles of the world, right? The Steve Schmitz, the neocon dick pigs, all these consulting class. I know these people so well because I used to run in their circles. I used to work in advertising. And I know they're tied to all these there's so much money in this world. And so I felt it when Bernie started winning. These people were threatened. They were like, oh, fuck. If these new progressives win, our days are over. Our days of milking shitlib money are done. Well, we can't milk shitlib money anymore if they win. And so that's why they fought tooth and nail to get Biden in. And, at the time, I didn't have the clarity or the evidence to say, this is totally what's going on. But now the evidence is all there. You saw it in the way, there was a whole thing about the grift of the Kamala campaign, how all these, consultant grifters who milk the party for money, the Lincoln Project, for example, they knew she wasn't going to win. Their internal polling showed that it wasn't going to win, but they kept trying to sell that narrative for donations, for money. And that's what this fight the oligarchy thing is, which we're going to get into in a few minutes. But before we get into that, I'd like to go to our good friends at the Gray Zone. Oh, wait a minute. There's a security concern. Okay, well, I see what happened. My link got messed up. Anyway. So to kind of break here, this conversation that Max and Aaron had, there's a bunch of great stuff in it, but I wanted to start with a clip that where they talk about Tulsi Gabbard. And Aaron, this is, again, Tulsi Gabbard is someone who is a complicated figure. And I got a lot of shit from people for saying, hey, regardless, because, again, there's this mentality of the current left, the opposition, or whatever you want to call it, the Bernie people, my people, the people I consider my people, to be like, oh, MAGA, you got tricked. Oh, you fucking got tricked. Na, 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 na. Nobody's winning anything, and it's fucking, first of all, junior high school playground bullshit. But no one with any sense, again, voted for Trump thinking that he was going to deliver everything without, any bumps in the road. People voted for Trump in desperation over, hey, these are the two fucking corporate goddamn dick pigs we get to choose between. The overwhelming chorus of corporate dick pigs is telling us that Trump's a Nazi and a fascist and going to ruin everything. And so that's who we're going to vote for, because if these, dick pigs are making that much noise about how terrible this is going to be, then we need to make sure it happens, because they're fucking awful and everything they say is wrong and has been for a long time. So that's kind of the place I see most Trump voters as coming from. And we were massively duped. The MAGA people are far more intelligent and well-read on politics than the brunch liberals are. It's overwhelmingly true. I talk to MAGA people all the time. They've been painted as these dumb rednecks. Trumpers are just dummies. And no, they're way smarter than the liberals. 1,000%. There's just no, and everyone will tell you this. I've seen Russ from Due Dissidents say this. I've seen Jimmy say this. It's just the reality. So when it comes to Tulsi Gabbard, my only point that I ever made about Tulsi Gabbard was, hey, she's not perfect, but who would be better that is realistically going to get into that position? Who's better that could actually get in there, like in reality? I would love it if Norm Finkelstein was the DNI guy, right? Like if Trump picked Trump's like Norm Finkelstein for DNI, like holy shit, that's wet dream, but that's not going to happen. So someone like Tulsi Gabbard in that position, I argued, is a good thing, given her long history of credibility on things like Bernie Sanders and the fact that she's a medic in the army who's like seen people die in wars. I think that's a good quality to have in a person who kind of controls that realm of our government. Then the icing on that cake is the fact that Hillary fucking Clinton and Kamala Harris and all these total proven war pig douchebags have tried to smear her as a Russian. I love it. I love Tulsi Gabbard in that position. And I don't know if you saw this, she revoked Kamala Harris and Clinton's security clearances, which is so fucking beautiful. Just on that alone, I love her in that role. That's it. She doesn't have to do anything else, and she's better than like the last 20 people. Okay, I don't know my history that well on who the DNI. There might not even be 20 of them. It might have started during the Bush era. But I'm just saying, just the fact that she pulled Hillary Clinton's security clearance makes her the best director of national intelligence ever. But liberals would be like, oh, dude, she's of Israel. It's like, dude, every fucking politician in DC is with Israel. You Goldilocks cunts. Like, you can't, your porridge ain't going to be perfect in this world, Goldilocks. It ain't going to be perfect. You got to fucking compromise a little bit. The reason I bring up this sore spot I have with Tulsi Gabbard and my friends on the left and how Goldilocks and fucking unrealistically idealistic they are is Aaron Mate. First of all, there was a guy named Daniel Davis that Tulsi Gabbard tried to appoint as deputy DNI. Well, the Israel lobby immediately was like, anti-Semitism. So that's like one of the first things I saw were first of Tulsi doing in her role. Now you have to remember too, she's one person in a sea of fucking entrenched dick pigs too. And Trump's been in office for 60 days. I don't know how long it's been since she was confirmed. Probably not even 30 yet. So again, you don't turn the Titanic around in, 10 days. And the unrealistic expectations of, the idealistic, naive people in my circles on the left is one of the reasons they never win anything. And so I just want to show you this bright spot that Aaron Mate pointed to in regards to Tulsi. And it's not a lot, but it's something. And let's watch it. Hold on a second. Let's see. Where's my time code marker? All right. Here it is. Forgive my clunkiness here, but this is good. This was worth the wait.
I just want to show. I want to show one thing. I'm just showing people this. This just came up from Axios. Tulsi Gabbard installs Iran dove to prepare Trump's intel briefing. And what the story is about is that basically Tulsi Gabbard's won out in this sort of struggle to see, in terms of who's going to be briefing Trump on Iran. It's actually someone who does not favor war with Iran. So now, does Trump care about what he's briefed in his intel briefing? Probably not. But I'm just trying to show people at least there's some divergence internally in the White House over war with Iran, and this is a sign that Tulsi Gabbard is on the side of those who don't want war with Iran, and to the point where someone in this position is briefing Trump, who does not want war with Iran. So that's just something.
So hey, again, it's not a lot. It's not the biggest win ever. The guy will probably be drummed out of fucking Washington, D.C. forever for, as a result of this. But this is the point I was making from day one about Tulsi Gabbard. Sure, she's a Zion, she's got Zion money Zionist money fucking coming out her ears like the rest of DC, Democrat and Republican. But she's also Tulsi Gabbard. She is the Bernie bro who fucking told the Democratic Party to go fuck itself and has been literally smeared as a Russian by Hillary Clinton and the establishment dick pigs for the last 10, 15 years or whatever it was, 10 years basically since she decided to in 2016, since she broke with the Democratic Party for their corruption. But anyway, let me let them finish out a little bit before we move on.
Like positive or potentially positive. At least it shows that not everybody is on board with the Israeli agenda inside the White House.
Yeah, there are others who are controversial and came under attack by Israel lobbyists. And, we saw some neocons ousted, like Doug Feith's son, David Feith, thanks to the ultra-Zionist intervention of Laura Loomer, or the intervention of ultra-Zionist Laura Loomer.
Yeah.
But then, and also, so they didn't go into the details here, but just so you know, Doug Feith, Google him, Douglas Feith, Feith. He was a huge neocon, like arguably one of the architects of the Iraq War. So his son was recently Loomered, is what Max is talking about here.
I thought I'd be grateful for someone getting Loomered, but
yeah. And then of course, what happened when Tulsi Gabbard was rumored to be considering Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis for a top position as her deputy? The Israel lobby revolted and made sure he wasn't hired. So it's true. Like it goes all ways. It goes both ways.
I mean, if you watch Trump's brief press conference with Netanyahu, he's not listening to any briefings. He's just like running his mouth. I just put in the chat.
Yeah, I don't think Max is necessarily wrong about that. By the same token, again, we have Tucker Carlson. We have Charlie Kirk. I almost said Charlie Hunter. If you know who Charlie Hunter is, badass guitar player, plays an 8-string guitar, bass and guitar at the same time, jazz musician. Charlie Kirk and Tucker Carlson. Candace Owens. So there is a loud chorus of voices that are against war with Iran, despite the neocon dick pigs like Mike Waltz and Marco Rubio and, the rest of the guys with the AIPAC fist up their ass, the puppets, There was another point in this I want to show you real quick that I thought was hilarious. These guys are making fun of, I don't know if you know who Ari Melber is. Ari Melber is this guy on MSNBC who kind of has a rep for being like the hip hop guy. And these guys kind of clown him a little bit at one point. And this could be a fun game to get into. But they here, I'll just play it. I don't want to ruin it, so I'm just gonna play it.
Welcome to the beat.
Hold on a second. I think I gotta go.
Ari would never dare
I don't know if there's like a 3-letter acronym to explain it, but like the level of Israeli control over it could make a good book if I could find the time. But I'm like, I'm very proud of the week we had at the Gray Zone the last week, just pumping out so much reporting, raw reporting and analysis, and being able to do this stream that I haven't found the time. And we got some more in the pipeline. Some incredible stuff from Kit Clarenberg and Jeremy Lafredo. Do you want to do the Pentagon budget?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, it's high.
This is good. This
The Pentagon budget is so high it could kiss the sky. Only Red Man could possibly describe the Pentagon budget. Hi, I'm Ari Melber. Welcome to the beat.
Ari would never dare, criticize the Pentagon budget. So like his hip hop references are for praising what's his name, Jack Smith or Robert Mueller.
Yeah.
Not for actually social commentary.
As MOP said, as Component Noriega said, shot. And that's why you need to get vaccinated, folks.
So I thought it would be funny to do, I mean, they bring it up, but it would be funny to just do like a bunch of like shit lib hip hop references. Like that. Capone and Noriega said shots. So, get your vaccines, guys. That's what they're trying to say with that. Or like Method Man and the Wu-Tang Clan had a very strong position against tariffs when they wrote the song Cream, Cash Rules Everything Around Me. Cream, pull those tariffs off, Trump. They're tanking the market. Like that's the kind of thing that Ari Melber would rant about, like what's another good one? Like Mac Miller had a great song about Donald Trump, but now, Mac Miller is on the anti-oligarch tour. Actually, Mac Miller's dead. I mean, just think of any rap song about money and throw it down with Bernie and and AOC's oligarch tour, basically. Money. Yeah, I'm all about my money, except when I'm not, because I wouldn't want to be an oligarch. I wouldn't want to be one of those people. So one of the last things I want to, this Gray Zone stream, by the way, was top tier. But one of the last things I want to touch on before we, as a segue kind of into our next segment, is Max's thoughts on your boy, Douglas Murray. So, as you know, Dave Smith and Douglas Murray had a debate on Joe Rogan this weekend. And I don't know if you've ever seen that meme where it's like got a pigeon that says like arguing with blank is like arguing with idiots is like playing chess with a pigeon. No matter how good your argument is, or no matter how bad that you beat them, they're still just going to walk around all over the board and shit on it and pretend like they won. That's kind of what the conservative, like Douglas Murray people are doing in the wake of his Joe Rogan debate with Dave Smith. And so I want to show you, first of all, what Max Blumenthal has to say about Douglas Murray, and then show you some of the MAGA influencer takes that I kind of think were a good sign about this debate. So let's start here with Max and Aaron talking about Douglas Murray.
Douglas Murray would be currently, he would just be like a buffer zone. He wouldn't even be there. But I don't, for some reason, get invited to do these debates. And I hope Dave Smith did well. I can't imagine it would be that hard to take on Douglas Murray. The only thing I've seen reviews of it, people saying, Douglas Murray just appealed to expertise and claimed to be some kind of an expert, where Dave Smith is just a comedian. Douglas Murray's not an expert. He's an agent. He's just an agent of Israeli influence.
I just love that. He's like, I can't imagine it'd be that hard to take on Douglas Murray. What an intellectual lightweight the guy is. And he's an agent. He's not an expert.
He wrote a book called Why We Need Neoconservatism. I don't know. He wouldn't be taken seriously if he wasn't astroturfed by a foreign apartheid state tentacles in the UK.
So I just remembered this, but I actually did an entire piece a while back, and the card says Douglas Murray is a fraud. So I had Douglas Murray's number a long time ago. But let Max and Aaron finish here.
That's my view. There aren't really any real pro-Israel experts. They don't exist. That's why politicians have to take over university departments on their behalf. And
that is a fucking incredible point. There are no Israel experts. That's why politicians have to take over college campuses on their behalf. Max Blumenthal, spitting fire.
They're ousting like Jewish scholars of anti-Semitism and Holocaust studies because they're not Zionist enough. Anyway, yeah,
Maybe we start on Miss Rachel.
It's good there is a debate. Rogan, Aaron, it seems like Rogan only will platform people who supported Trump or who are on the right on this. And Dave Smith, I think he supported Trump.
I don't know what Joe Rogan's criteria is, but he seems to have like a circle of people who he kind of goes back to and relies on, and obviously he likes Dave Smith, but
Dave Smith is also very smart and knowledgeable about the subject, and he's Jewish. And so I like Aaron's take there. And also I like what Max said before that, which is it's good that people are talking about it. That's the point I wanted to make more than anything. Whether you like or dislike Joe Rogan, or you think he's a plant, or you think he's right-wing, or you think he's anti-vax, or whatever you think, he's having this conversation. He's exposing, that's the thing. I don't like, again, going back to my friends that love to dunk on MAGA. I know there was an incident a while back where Joe Rogan had that Mark Andreessen guy on, and the Andreessen guy made this argument about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and Joe Rogan just kind of sat there and nodded. Joe Rogan wasn't prepared to debate the guy about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and now he just kind of nodded and let the guy say what he said. He's not a journalist, and I think there were a lot of people, there's this misdirected anger at Joe Rogan for like not checking that guy on not knowing enough to check the guy on the CFPB. And I don't fault Rogan for stuff like that. It's clearly something he was out of his depth on. That guy was way out of his depth on it, but the Andreessen guy. Anyway, point being is this Dave Smith, Douglas Murray debate is going to be seen by millions, maybe billions of people. And it punches holes in the common narrative. And it's the only place a debate like that is happening that anyone's going to see it. It's not happening on CNN. It's not happening on MSNBC. And so low key, you have to give Joe Rogan a lot of credit for this, because first of all, Douglas, all he did was put these guys together and let them talk. And it just exposed, like Max said, how bankrupt one side of the argument is and how empty it is. There is no argument. They have nothing except censorship, which is why they're fucking deporting people and shutting down college campuses. And on top of all of that, the loudest MAGA voices, I don't know where Charlie Kirk stands on that. He's probably not good. But Candace Owens and Dave Smith are MAGA voices who are like, no, you can't just deport someone like Mahmoud Khalil because he fucking, disagrees with you on Israel. I didn't see Kyle Kulinski or Cenk Uygur come out in favor of Gonzalo Lira when he was murdered by the Ukrainian, in prison. I don't know the full story. I shouldn't say that. Maybe I'm misquoting. I don't want to get my stream shut off. But point being is, I didn't see Kyle Kulinski or any of the fucking Biden bro influencers on the left, the guys with, or Hassan, or any of the guys with major platforms saying anything about the Ukraine. Now, to Hassan's credit, he's good on the Gaza thing. He's actually one of the large platforms on the left that's speaking about it. But I think he has to. It's almost like it would be more uncomfortable for him not to speak about it because of his ethnicity and his ethnic background and how large his platform is. So I'm pointing at the Ukraine thing specifically because people like Hassan and Kyle and the liberal left went along with that war, hook, line, and sinker, no question. And in fact, called people who criticized it Russians. So point again that I'm making here is I think MAGA has a lot more credibility in opposing their leadership than the left does. And so the people that are trying to dunk on the MAGA people and call them out, like, they should check themselves, because it's not, we're just getting started. And, again, I think valid criticism is valid criticism, period. I'm not here to, suck up to power, but I also think that you're being a little premature in your judgment. And so that's most of what I would have to say about Max and Aaron's take on Douglas Murray. But now I want to show you Tim Pool's take on this debate. And I thought this was really interesting because it was not what I expected, especially after Tim Pool's recent meeting with Netanyahu, which, you know, this might be why he has to play this kind of intellectual role here. But this is interesting. Just listen to, and again, the thing I like about Tim Pool, and I've said this many times, is even though I may disagree with him personally on some of this stuff, he has a big table of people. He has Ian Crossland. I always mix Ian Crossland and Ian Carroll up. So someone who corrected me on that before, and good on you for doing that. Ian Crossland and Phil, and they'll have guests in there sometimes. And so at the very least, they have a bunch of different takes on a subject. Even if I don't like what Tim Pool's saying, one of the people at his table will voice an opinion that, you know, is at least valid or a counterweight to his, you know, being wrong. But let's listen to what they kind of their initial take on this Dave Smith and Douglas Murray debate.
Did you guys see the Dave Smith Douglas Murray debate?
I saw the first half. I watched the first half.
I think Dave Smith handily trounced Douglas Murray. What say you, gents?
Man, I only caught 15 or 20 minutes of it, the first 20 minutes of it. And it was basically Douglas Murray
So-
saying, look, what I don't like is people coming in saying the most ridiculous stuff. The earth is a donut. He didn't say that. I'm saying that. But
Tim, right out the gate, I think Dave Smith handily trounced Douglas Murray. He can't
ridiculous stuff. And then when people call him on it, and I'm going to call out Bill Burr for this because he went on The View and was talking about like, yay, Luigi. And then when they ask him about it, he's like, I'm just a comedian. Don't look at me. Dude, you went on national. I don't care. You hide behind your credentials, bro. You said it. Get behind it. Now,
that's a good point.
It's the same with this. You can't just say crap and then plead like, no, leave me alone.
You mean Dave?
Look at my badge. It says comedian on it.
Dave going, I'm just a comedian, man.
Yeah, and Dave does do that. Dave, you're one of my best friends. I fucking love you, man. But that I don't like that tactic. I don't like that tactic. You're a human first, and the things you say are.
But Dave doesn't do that. This is the thing. Dave doesn't do that as like a cop out for his like argument. You know, that he's not like, well, I'm just a comedian. I'm wrong about. He's right about his argument. That's the thing. But he doesn't present himself as an expert. He's like Douglas Murray does, who writes books. And let's keep going though. I have some good shit for you here.
You're responsible for that.
But the reason I disagree with that is that Dave is not deflecting. Oh no, I'm wrong now. I better say I'm a comedian. Now I'm going to claim to be right. He's saying, like the point is, I am a regular person who is concerned about the things that I have seen, and you're asking me to get into the intricacies of something that is not pertinent to what the principle.
Yeah, like I mean, Douglas Murray is essentially like, you know, you don't need to have an opinion about everything, kind of, if you're not an expert. And you're like, we're literally all in the opinion business. Like that is the business we're
like. With all due respect to Douglas Murray, because you know I met him recently.
I like Douglas Murray.
Yeah,
I like both. I mean, I know both
right.
of them. I like.
He said, he's like, have you ever been to the checkpoints or whatever at Gaza? And he's like, no. And he's like, really? When was the last time you were in Israel? And Dave's like, I've never gone. He goes, really? You've never been? Never? And Dave's like, no. Am I not allowed to talk about it now? Like, have you ever been in Nazi Germany? And then Douglas Murray, I think, makes a very, very awful point when he says, well, I mean, I make it a point not to talk about a country unless I've been there. And I'm like, come on, dude, you're convincing nobody.
Well, he's British. He doesn't understand the ethos of America.
I've never been to Afghanistan, and I'm going to complain about what the U.S. did in Afghanistan. I've never been to Iraq, and I'm going to complain. Like, it's silly that he's like, you should go. Dave is entirely allowed to talk about Israel, Palestine, what's happening to the Palestinians without having been there. That's silly.
Yeah.
So the issue
So good on Tim Pool for being intellectually honest here, you know? And again, through the last several years, I've noticed the MAGA people a lot more willing to criticize their leadership or the common narrative amongst their group more openly, especially at the top levels, than I have seen it in the top levels of left media, which is one of the reasons they're all scrambling right now to look for their Joe Rogan. You guys used to have your Joe Rogan. It used to be like Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert until they completely, you know, started sucking Democrat dick. And the neocons all moved into the Democratic Party. And now, because they sucked that dick, they just instantly agree with stuff that they used to openly fight against. for partisan reasons, and that's why those people have lost credibility. That's why people like Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan was pretty openly against Trump. He didn't like Trump. There's tons and tons of footage of him talking about how he doesn't like Trump for a long time. And people trying to get him, it took a lot of convincing for him to even have Trump on his show and all that stuff. And then once he did, obviously he met the guy and there was humanization occurred and then his opinion changed. But, it's Joe Rogan is not some partisan hack. And that's why people like him is the point I'm making. But let me let Tim and these guys finish.
I largely take with Douglas Murray's position in the debate was it was very much, it was very dry, overt talking point we hear of like appeal to authority. Like if you've not been there, you can't talk, and you're not the experts. It's anybody saying whatever they want, and like you don't know what you're talking about here. Whereas Dave is like, I'm a regular guy who lives in this country and is upset at what is happening in this country pertaining to our taxes, our involvement in the Middle East. We should not be involved in these things. I happen to agree with Dave in this regard, and I think this endless multi-decade, generational, constantly being in a state of warfare is insane. And I think it's unfair to say to me or to anybody, because you've not traveled to these places, you shouldn't speak of them, as if an average American plumber whose taxes are taken by force to fund war in the Middle East, be it or Ukraine, Israel, or otherwise, has to travel there, ask the general or any of the experts what's going on before he's allowed to say, stop taking my money to fund your wars. So I'm with Dave on this one.
Yeah. And I mean, I do it like, yeah, I agree with that. And I agree with Douglas Murray.
So again, this is the MAGA take about this war. The popular MAGA take on this impending war with Iran is no, not good, guys, not good. Sure, there are some dick pigs shilling for it, but I'm encouraged by this. And I want to show you one more thing before we move on, because this is who Douglas Murray is. This is from Dan Cohen. Let me enlarge this so y'all can see it. Dan Cohen says, Israel doesn't allow foreign journalists to enter Gaza since October 7th. Douglas Murray was shepherded into Gaza by the Israeli military for a propaganda stunt in the chair where Sinwar was killed. Remember when they did that? They killed that guy in the chair with a drone and released the video. That's his claim to expertise, a complete and utter fraud. Look at that. Tough guy shit. Tell Sultan Rafa today where the terrorist Sinwar met his end. Tell the terrorists this is where Sinwar met his end. What a clown. Oh my God. So just to kind of put the icing on my cake here, the larger MAGA independent media movement is against this shit. They're not for Douglas Murray's arguments. They think he's a clown. And that is encouraging. And then you have Tulsi Gabbard quietly appointing an Iran dove, like someone who is not pro-war with Iran, to brief President Trump about what's going on. You have Trump kind of like subtly dissing Netanyahu, his whole like, oh, we give you $4 billion. That's lame. Congratulations, buddy. That's a lot. And so, again, I'm not saying, hey, we should all jump up and down and shout for joy and act like the world's problems are solved, but these are steps in the right direction, or these are like subtle little, what's the word, kernels, grains of hope on the beach of fucking despair that I think are worth looking at, because we're only less than 90 days about 90 days into the Trump administration. And now right-wing circles, popular discourse is happening about Gaza, about war with Iran. We already know where they stand on Ukraine, but I think we're to a tipping point with the Middle East, where a lot of the MAGA people are like, no, fuck you, dude. Like, we did not vote for this. We voted for Make America Great Again. It's very simple. It's a very simple slogan. That's why it worked so well. But now the rubber meets the road, and we see if the marketing or the product lives up to the marketing. listen, given Trump's history and the historical precedent behind the things Trump sells, the product is probably not going to be that good. You also have to consider the fact that in government, the CEO or the president does not have complete control of the product. There's a lot of other cooks in the kitchen, as we can see with, the Mike Waltzes, the Marco Rubios, these are the people that Trump could easily get into these positions. And if you remember, he also fired a lot of people in his first term. He's famous for firing people. So who knows? We'll see how this plays out. We'll see if Mike Waltz still has his position if he keeps leaking shit to Jeffrey Goldberg. You know what I mean? We'll see if the war with Iran that Israel clearly wants ends up actually happening because, they met this weekend. So it'll be interesting next week to see what the press cycle says. I'll be watching closely. Well, let's move on to another little Tim Pool piece I want to talk about. And this kind of ties all of this together with the tariffs, the coming war with Iran, MAGA, and the Democrats. And I found this cute little graphic. It's kind of a cross between deplorables and les miserables, les deplorables, I guess is how you would say this, right? But what this is about is kind of something we already talked about in the opening segment with Taibbi and Walter Kern, but just the effect of the economy on the average American worker and the kind of framing of what these tariffs are going to do. Now, again, there is this tendency I notice of my friends on the left in the progressive circles to, viciously dunk on the people who voted for Trump or who, thought that the MAGA thing was going to work out, and it's not working out the way that they had hoped yet. And you see this with especially the shit libs who are mad, the investment class who have, who was it? Was it Ben Shapiro had this thing about his friend who's a jeweler who imports all his jewelry, who's going to be very hurt by these tariffs, and you just don't understand. It's like, yeah, of course we don't understand because we don't fucking sell jewelry that we import from Israel. So so again, these are the people who are pushing the types of narratives I'm about to show you. And this is another, we're going to stick with Tim Pool here, but they did a piece on, and I saw this going around. This was viral. Hold on a second. Oh man. Hold on a second. We gonna share this tab instead, doggy. Okay. Let's start over here because my software is obviously tripping. But this is a clip with Tim Pool, and he's talking about a meme that kind of circulated, making fun of people who supported Trump, who think that these tariffs are going to bring American factories back to the United States. These stupid people who are obviously the dumbest people alive.
From our good friend Kyle Kulinski, who hates you. They hate the working class. They hate the American worker in general. They call you flyover states. And Kyle Kulinski posted this video, which is going viral, of factory workers. This is it. Let me play the video for you. Here's a fat, middle-aged guy sewing some shorts or some other shirt. Some fat, obese American women sewing things.
Music.
Here's a guy making some bras. Some white people making phones. That's crazy. Make America great again, it says. And the left is laughing. They love it. There's another meme that they share where it's a guy in a MAGA hat wearing a ribbon that says "Fell for it again," who says, "Wait a minute, there's a mistake. I thought I was going to own the factory and be rich."
Well, fuck you, Cap.
So again, I think this is a mistake. And Democrats wonder why they're losing the working class. It's because of stuff like this. Now, these guys get into a little bit more nuanced conversation about this, but this is not a good look. You know, is there something wrong? Like, is there something wrong with working in a factory? People used to work in factories all the time in the United States. My mother is an operations director who spent her life working on an assembly line, running assembly lines for software companies that would package. She started in the 90s when software was something that you got in the mail, or it was a floppy disk you put in a computer. She worked in a warehouse with an assembly line where they fucking, had a plastic heat press that fucking bagged the software, the discs, 3 discs into a thing, and it went down the belt into a fucking box, and then it got mailed to some jackass in America somewhere. Should I be ashamed of that because my mother worked in that environment and fed me and my family, for all those years? Like, that is the kind of fucking vibe these people are putting out now with this kind of stuff. And it's like, you guys wonder why you lost? You're not even hiding anymore that you're the party of rich cunts, out of touch cunts who fucking have to like falsely manipulate your own support because no one likes you, even the people who are supposed to. Let's keep going here.
As Trump pumps a shotgun and says, "So the effing socks." This is what they think about you. The American workers who work in factories or who wish their factories remained open that were outsourced to foreign countries. The example that I've been citing consistently now is the My Pillow factory. You got a bunch of workers at the My Pillow factory who love their jobs, and they're making socks, and they're making.
So, I'll let him suck the My Pillow guy's dick another time. I'm sure that guy's advertising on his show, but they get into a debate here about whether or not Gen X will do these types of jobs. And this is the part I want to show you. We'll discuss.
Gen Z politicians are there?
I don't think, a handful.
Oh,
people run for stuff.
who's that chick with the keffia?
Yeah, but she's not in. She's
yet.
not in. So,
is Jasmine
Plenty
Crockett?
who want to try.
I don't think she's Gen Z.
I'm not sure how old Jasmine Crockett is.
How many millennial are there?
Millennials.
A greater number now, but I would say massively delayed. And part of it is they say that when
oh no, Jasmine Crocker's a millennial.
170% increase in Gen Z lawmakers taking office as of 2023.
But what does that mean?
State reps.
Is that in?
I
Yeah, is
don't
that state
know.
reps or is that in Congress?
And how many of them are communists?
Yeah.
Probably most.
A lot of them, I'd imagine. So, look, my view is
These guys don't even know
when
what
you see these
communists
stories
are.
of 30-year-old virgins. We had a movie that came out, what was it, 10, 15 years ago called The 40-Year-Old Virgin. And it was like, ha, 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 how funny of this guy who like never had it happen for him. Now we have increasing reports that young men have isolated themselves and there's like early 30s virgin men. And again, I always mention this because Seamus Scott
jump into
As of 2020.
A handful.
Oh,
doing like a mid-level position with incapable
Goes crap, but 18 to
basically DoorDash and streaming services. So they want to live in or near cities. So are the factories going to be in or near cities?
I don't think so. I think you put them in places where the culture is working. So like I come from a mining town. Not everyone, I shouldn't say everyone.
Okay.
But
So this is more the part of the conversation I wanted to highlight a little bit of, and I probably should have done a better job timestamping it, but to kind of set this up. What they're talking about here is whether or not Gen Z people will do these jobs, because right now a lot of younger people are working like DoorDash and Lyft and Uber. I mean, shit, I've been doing Lyft and Uber, Amazon, that kind of thing. So The question is, if these factories come back to the U.S., will these people work? Will these jobs be worked by American workers? And I think if you pay a decent wage, you pay $20 an hour, $18 an hour. Of course, if you pay a fair wage, you give benefits and all that kind of stuff. If you're forced to, yeah, people will work these jobs. Like I said, my mother worked in a goddamn software assembly line when we were kids for most of her life. And she still works in factories doing so. It's, she started at the bottom and now she's like the operations director or whatever. But it's a respectable way to live. And this idea that, like, especially with the way the economy is going, when you look at like the way that e-commerce is picking up and more things are just going to be mail order, there are going to be a lot of warehouses and factory jobs in the new economy. And maybe a lot of it's robots. I don't know, but there are going to need to be human elements in a lot of this factory. Anyway, let's listen to a little bit more what they have to say before we close this out.
Of people, when they get to like a legal working age, like 18 to, they're out of high school, 18 to 25, whatever, they go and work in the mines, and they're happy to do that and they love it because they're making good money, whatever. So you have to put them in places where the culture is to work. And I think when you put the factories in those places, the town around it will develop on its own. And it's not like a mine where I'm from. The mine dries up, the town goes to crap. But
I think the issue largely is that younger generations starting with probably to a.
So I just want to say, like, what that guy kind of said is what basically happened, and I see it all the time. I mean, in New Mexico, for example, Intel has a factory outside of Albuquerque in a little city called Rio Rancho. That city, Rio Rancho, is basically the city that fucking Intel built. People will tell you, the locals in Rio Rancho will tell you flat out, Intel paid for the goddamn roads and some of the parks, and because they employ like 2/3 of the goddamn local population there. So that does happen, of course. I mean, it happens with military installations. It happens with government stuff. If you are if these, with the Apple stuff that's about to happen, you can almost guarantee if Apple builds a giant chip factory somewhere in some random part of Arizona, there's going to be a gigantic economic, spread around that area, because there are going to be people that need jobs that will move there and need groceries and amenities. So it just makes sense. Let's hear what Tim has to say before we move into Bill Maher.
Smaller degree Gen X, to a greater degree millennials, to a great degree millennials, and then to an even greater degree Gen Z. The older generation continually treats the younger generation like incompetent children, incapable of doing anything. Mm-hmm. So whereas a 22-year-old man should be either running his own shop or the manager of a business or doing like a mid-level position, with starting out his family, buying his first home, having kids. Today, in the news, in the media, in our culture, they will say a 22-year-old is a child. Like a 22-year-old fully grown adult human being, and they treat him like a child. Mm-hmm. And so we don't have how many Gen Z politicians are there?
I don't think, a handful.
Oh,
people run for stuff.
Who's that chick with the keffia?
Yeah, but she's not in.
So that's not a bad point Tim is making. And I probably should have done a better job curating that clip, but the point stands. I think it's yet to be seen what's going to happen with this tariff stuff, and B, this idea that like people won't work these jobs that immigrants largely have in factories and on assembly lines and stuff. Yes, they will if you pay them a reasonable wage. They completely will, and they used to, and a lot of people still do. And the people that are fomenting that opinion that like, oh, of course not. I got an argument with my brother over this, to the point where like he won't even talk to me now. And he's a little bit of a sensitive, touchy person, because I have the same types of arguments with other people and they don't fucking freak out like that. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But the point being was, he argued with me that people won't work these jobs if you get rid of the immigrant labor market. And I said, yeah, the people that have convinced you that are the people that take advantage of immigrant labor. The people who are like, oh, dude, you can't take my cheap labor away. Oh, Americans don't work these jobs. Like, I'm going to have to pay people a living wage. Fuck. Like, those are the people claiming that no one's going to work these jobs. So that's what you're up against. If you pay people a reasonable wage, Costco is one of the best employers in the country. Giant warehouse, pays people a living wage, takes good care of their people, does extremely well, and has grown leaps and bounds over the last 20 years because of it. So yes, there are examples in reality that prove this point, that if you bring these jobs back and you pay a fair wage, people will work them that are not illegal immigrants. It will happen, folks. But we're gonna find out. We are about to see over the next couple of years whether or not this little experience is going to work. And again, just to circle back to my original point, the people who've been wrong about everything are the biggest critics. So that's where we're at. Anyway, let's move on to, this is our second to last story of the day. This is Bill Maher's dinner with Donald Trump. Now, I'm not the hugest fan of Bill Maher anymore, but I will give him credit for one thing. He is a mainstream shitlib voice who at least brings a little bit of like self-reflection to the table with these people, which you're not going to get from Rachel Maddow. You're not going to get from Keith Olbermann, these like ranting, carnival barkers on MSNBC. Bill Maher, at least, I might not agree with him on everything, but he's at least like a voice of reason. Like in the COVID thing being a great example, he was one of the first like left-leaning hosts or people in mainstream talk to be critical of the mandates and that kind of thing. And a lot of us were at the outset of it. But anyway, to give you some backstory, Bill Maher recently announced that his buddy Kid Rock set up a dinner with Donald Trump, his arch nemesis, at the White House. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but there was this whole thing with Obama where Trump was constantly, calling for the birth certificate of Obama. And it was racist. I thought it was racist at the time. I was like, dude, that's fucking racist. Like, just because he's a black dude, like, yeah, he's not really a citizen. Like, come on. That's it. Knowing what I know now about Obama, maybe I wouldn't consider it racist. I still think it's a little bit petty. And so in response to that, as a joke, Bill Maher put out this thing like, how I want Trump to prove that his mother's not an orangutan. And Trump sued him for that. And so they have this they've had an antagonistic relationship for a long time. So this type of a summit is kind of a big deal. And so I don't know, I don't know that I'm going to get in trouble for playing. I probably will, but I'm not monetized, so I don't care. But I'm going to play some of the Bill Maher rundown on his meeting with Trump, and HBO be damned, because I thought it was interesting. You may or may not be surprised. You may have already seen it. A lot of people that follow politics closely have already seen it, I'm sure. But I thought it was interesting and worth discussion. And so we are going to watch it right now. I'm not a centrist, but that is one of the things that I noticed, especially during the COVID thing. I became hyper aware of this tendency to like convince me to hate people that don't see things the same as me. And I think that really changed me. That's what really kind of like made me go, oh, maybe Trump isn't as bad as they say he is. And then, everything else. It really started with, oh, this whole thing about like what they're doing with the pandemic, a lot of it is bullshit. And so maybe that same thing applies to what they're saying about Trump and the MAGA people being Nazis and all that. So you're welcome. Congratulations, MSNBC and liberal class. You guys are the ones who red pilled people like me with your nonsense. I have a piece. Go watch. Go look through my videos. But Trump is like the roast comic in chief. That's basically what I referred to him as, the roast comic in chief. Which, when I was a little younger and more sensitive, I might not have understood, but now I like it, as you can tell. And Bill Maher gets it. Can you imagine Trump like having Stormy Daniels at the White House or something? Most people probably wouldn't give a shit, but he's so scrutinized. There's no way he could. Plus, he's got a gorgeous wife and everything. But it is funny how much Bill Clinton got away with, and how the same people who loved Bill Clinton are such hypocrites when it comes to other politicians. Headline right there. Trump admitted to Bill Maher that he lost the 2020 election. I'm surprised that's not all over MSNBC. It might be. I haven't looked. You think Bill Maher lost half of his audience after this for normalizing fascism? Maybe. It's a good question, valid question to ask. So that's on top of what I showed you about, with Kim Iversen talking about, how kind of devastating it was that Trump to tell Netanyahu we're negotiating with Iran. And then Tulsi Gabbard, having a dove brief him. And now you have Bill Maher calling him out directly on nuking the Iran deal. So I'm interested to see what the news looks like next week on this. But that's, I thought that was a very interesting tie-in in this like otherwise kind of, entertainment-based political news. Apologizing for it too. I love it. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Like that's just what happened. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, guys. He was actually like kind of cool. I kind of enjoyed it. I kind of like the guy now. Like he was like kind of nice." It reminds me of, I got in like a pretty heated argument with one of my relatives a while back, and because he was just like, "Oh, I fucking hate Donald Trump. I fucking hate him. I hate him." And I was like, bro, you see him through the eyes of people who hate him. Have you ever met him? And he's like, "No, but I haven't met this person or that." I'm like, right. And I'm guilty of this too. I'm not saying that it's specifically you, but like we're all guilty of that. We judge people through the eyes of other people. We judge people through, like, Elon Musk is another great example. 5 years ago, everyone fucking loved Elon Musk. Obama was praising Elon Musk. Elon Musk fucking made electric cars sexy. People who wanted the environment to improve were like, fuck yeah, Elon Musk. Now, because he sided with Trump, all of a sudden he is the devil incarnate. He can't do anything right. There's nothing good about him, and never was. He's a fascist. He's a Nazi. He's whatever you need. He's the worst person alive. So it's like, it's good to see someone with the credibility of Bill Maher, or the audience of Bill Maher, maybe not necessarily the credibility. And again, I don't always agree with Bill Maher, but I like this. I like that he's not afraid to go, "Hey, look, dude." And good on Kid Rock too for fucking bridging the gap a little bit. I think, again, it's like, I'm not going to hate my fellow Americans who have different views than me. And like the propaganda around Trump has just been so intense. It still is. We're going to get to the next piece of this, the final piece of the day, about orchestrated fucking enthusiasm but let me let Maher finish here, because this last bit's good. This is a very interesting part of this that I kind of missed the first time I saw it. He's talking about watching 60 Minutes. Again, people who hate Trump controlling your perception of Trump. Like, that's what I was trying to explain to my relative. Like, yes, of course you hate Trump because you're constantly fed this perception of him that he's a piece of shit by people who hate him. And I'm not saying he's a great person, but it's like that factors into how you see the world in such a major way that, I mean, this really hit me hard during the pandemic, where I'm like, holy shit, like, I viscerally hate these people because the TV told me they like want my grandma to die because they didn't want to do the thing that everyone said they should do. and the gears in my head start going like, that is kind of weird that like, you know, now I'm outside walking in the streets during, you know, I go for a jog because I can't go to a gym, and there's someone coming down the street and they like cross the street to the other side because I'm a deadly fuck. I might be a dead, you know, every single person you come into contact with could kill you. That's like the level of propaganda we got to. And like, that's when all this shit started to unravel with me. And I started to see, like, again, like what Bill just said, he has this nice dinner and like Trump's like a jovial guy and he can take criticism. He can laugh at himself. And then he goes home and turns on 60 Minutes and they're like, and sees this piece of shit demon, this absolute horrible monster, which is exactly what they want you to see. And it's why they carefully curate every little clip, and the language around everything is you start to notice it when you read these articles with skepticism, or you hear the way these people all repeat the same kind of phrases and stuff. And, you know, what makes me hopeful about all this before I let Bill finish is that I think the rest of you are as smart as I am. I think most people out there are just like me. And I drive rideshare, so I talk to a lot of fucking people and I see it in reality. So I don't want to get choked up, but I love you guys. I think Americans are much more intelligent and empathetic than we get credit for. So why can't we get the guy that I met to be the public guy? I'll tell you why, Bill, because people are fucking scum. And you have to, sometimes to fight monsters, you have to become a monster. It's just how it is. Like if you've ever been in LA traffic, if you've ever driven in LA traffic, I think that phrase all the time. Like sometimes to fight the monsters, you got to become, because you're like, oh, fuck, I gotta crowbar my way into this lane, you motherfucker. Sorry, that was a little emotional. Hold on.
Gracious and measured, and why he isn't that in other settings, I don't know, and I can't answer, and it's not my place to answer. I'm just telling you what I saw, and I wasn't high.
So I love when he goes, "We don't like you." I'm gonna have to get a sound drop of that. But good on him for doing that. And again, at the end of it, Bill says, "I don't know why he's not the person I saw on TV." Well, I just told you why, Bill, because they don't want you to see a person like that on TV because they're adversarial to him for whatever reason. And that doesn't make him right about everything, but it's definitely great to see these terrible people shivering and shaking and freaking out. So let's move on to our last piece of the night, or the day. The night. I guess on the East Coast, if you're watching on the East Coast, it's about 4:00, so it's technically the evening on the East Coast. But it's where I'm at, it's definitely the afternoon. So this is our last piece of the afternoon. And this stems from an article by Li Fong, a recent article that he wrote called Democrats' Dark Money Fund for TikTok Influencers. But he mentions, I'm going to show you a clip before we get into this. Well, we'll show the clip afterwards. But one of the things he says in this clip, the terms he uses, it's in my card, orchestrated enthusiasm. And Google AI had this to say about orchestrated enthusiasm. Orchestrated enthusiasm refers to a situation where someone carefully and strategically encourages or inspires a group to show a high level of energy and excitement for a particular goal or event. It suggests a deliberate effort to build and maintain enthusiasm rather than it being a spontaneous occurrence. Rachel Maddow is the person who I learned the term astroturfing from. And orchestrated enthusiasm is basically a form of that. It's a form of astroturfing, right? It's just manufactured following, really. And what I would argue is no one is better at orchestrated enthusiasm than the Democrats, especially over the last couple of years. So Li Fang has receipts for this, and we're going to get into this right now and how it applies to Bernie's oligarchy tour, among other things. But this is from Li Fang again. He put this out on March 31st, so it's already a week and a half old. But here's what the headline says: exclusive Democrats' dark money fund for TikTok influencers. The covert $10 million campaign to promote Kamala Harris through TikTok creators, Instagram moms, and YouTube talk shows. Now, YouTube talk shows includes people like Kyle Kalinske, Sam Cedar, all those fake ass, the guys in the van, whatever the fuck their name is, all these like weak ass Democrat dick pigs who like suck puppets, who just suck puppet. I like that word. That's a great word to describe Kyle Kalinske. Kyle Kalinske is a suck puppet.
First of all, you're wrong.
So anyway, Li Fang goes into the details of how these, the consulting class here spreads money around to buy fake influence with people like Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball. And I'm gonna try to read this real fast because then I have some footage to play for you as well. But we're going to start with this article. And here we go. Li Fang laying it down for you. The abrupt withdrawal last year of President Joe Biden as the Democratic presidential nominee followed rapidly by his replacement with Vice President Kamala Harris, irked but many voters left out by the process. Yet social media seemed to ooze with enthusiasm and Gen Z-friendly hipster appeal. Influencers flooded the web with neon matcha green pro-Harris videos synced to beats from singer Charlie XCX's album Brat, released last year. The poppy rave videos gushed journalists, showed that Harris embodied the confidently independent brat vibe conveyed by the music. Social media pages bubbled with memes celebrating Harris as the voice of queer and Black youth, in contrast with the Republican agenda of white supremacy. Digital creator Amelia Montooth, in one viral TikTok video, kissed a woman and tried searching for pornography actions her sketch suggested would be banned if Harris lost the election. Wow. Harris, a career politician favored by the Democratic Party's establishment, never quite fit the bill as an icon of activist movements, but the sudden influencer buzz seemed to transform the slodgy former prosecutor into an icon of the cultural zeitgeist. Now, I want to see if I have it here, but yeah, I do. At this time, I made this meme, which I think is hilarious, and I'm going to share with you right now. Brunch Republicans against Trump, and that is Liz, your heroes, Liz and Dick Cheney. I was going to say Lick and Diz Cheney. That would have been even better, like if they were rappers. Yo, it's Lick and Diz from the Brat group, Lick and Diz Cheney. Anyway. Back to the story. Lick and Diz up in this piece. Lick and Diz bringing the ruckus up in this piece, dog. It's Lick and Diz. Hold on. Lick and Diz, brah. Lick and Diz bringing the brat vibes to the Democratic campaign, dog. Anyway. Let's keep going. Sorry about that. I had to bring out Lick and Diz. As it turns out, the tidal wave of enthusiasm was not entirely genuine. Imagine that. Much of the content, including Montooth's videos, was quietly funded by an elusive group of Democratic billionaires and major donors in an arrangement designed to conceal the payments from voters. Real Clear Investigations obtained internal documents and WhatsApp messages from Democratic strategists behind the influencer campaign. Way to Win, one of the major donor groups behind the effort, spent more than 9.1 million on social media influencers during the 2024 presidential election. Payments revealed here for the first time. The amount was touted in a document circulated after the election detailing the organization's accomplishments. So they released this shit as a way to like show how awesome what they were doing was. Amazing. The effort supported over 550 content creators who published 6,664 posts across platforms. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, and X. Way to win, coach creators and phrases, issue areas, and key themes to disseminate pro-Kamala content throughout the cycle. A post-election memo from the group noted. So this company like did a what do you call it? A case study about how they spent all this money and put it out to like gin up more business, I'm sure, even after they lost, which is hilarious. The look behind the curtain reveals that at least some of the image making around the Harris candidacy was carefully orchestrated. That's very generous. At least some of the image making around the Harris candidacy was carefully orchestrated. At least some, pretty like mostly all, let's say, by the same types of covert social media marketing often used by corporate brands and special interest groups. Such campaigns provide the illusion of organic support through the authentic appeal of trusted social media voices. Wah, wah, wah. Oh my God. Ah. All right. Way to Win in internal messages touted its work with a stable of Democratic Party affiliated influencers and activists, including Harry Sisson, Emily Amick, Katie Abu, and Dash Dabrowski. Oh my God. That guy is so terrible. I was going to say, I recognize Dash Dabrowski because he's one of those like shit libs who would come up in my feed and I'd be like, there's no way you're this dumb unless you're being paid to be this dumb. Like, it's so obvious these people are getting money to be this dumb. And you see the same dynamic with the like people who acting like Douglas Murray won the debate against Dave Smith. These same types of groups are funneling them money. Guarantee you. Guaranteed. It might not be this group specifically, but it's an APAC affiliated group that spends millions of dollars on social media influencers to pretend Douglas Murray won. Anyway, Dash Dabrowski is a fucking idiot. I don't know who the other people are, but let's keep going. The group also overtly cultivated non-political creators, influencers, typically known for travel vlogs, comedic skits, or cooking recipes, and seeded them with positive, specific pro-Kamala content. So that's what you see with this guy like the Misfit Patriot or the Politics girl. They're all just like, hey, I'm in my kitchen doing a thing. I'm super authentic. And then the DNC's like, here's some money. And they're like, hey, Kamala Harris is the best. Trump's a Nazi. Anyway, seeded them with positive, specific pro-Kamala content. That was integral in setting the tone on the internet and driving additional organic digital support. The effort often took the form of talking points that were rapidly distributed to the in-network creators. Jesus Christ. So again, I mean, to someone like me, this has been obvious for a long time because I used to work in advertising, but it's all fake. We all know this too. If you're watching my stream, chances are good you knew these people like Dash Dabrowski was being paid. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't take a genius to listen to the intelligence level of someone like a Dash Dabrowski and go like, dude, this guy is either the biggest idiot on the planet or someone's just paying him to say stupid shit. Dash Dabrowski. Bro, who is Tim Wall? Said Abe the artist, one of TikTok's creators backed by Way to Win. He's a football coach. That's hard, the influencer continued. It's time for Republicans to drop out. It's not looking good for y'all. So this little graphic here is like a slide from the presentation that this company who did all this fake shit put out to try and sell themselves after they lost the election, after they, took millions and millions of dollars and lost anyway. In a series of internal presentations about the influencer campaign, Way to Win emphasized its data-driven approach. We know what messaging works, noted Liz Jeff, a branding strategist working with Way to Win during a call with donors last year. She touted the use of an AI-based focus group tool developed by Future Forward, the Harris campaign's primary super PAC. Just a bunch of fucking marketing people exchanging money in politics now, in Democratic politics. Just like, sorry we lost the election. Give us our couple million now anyway. That's Democratic politics for you. Jeff also explained the process for developing talking points that could be inserted into organic appearing messages. That's like, that phrase right there is just like, mwah. Organic appearing messages. Nothing describes the Democratic Party better than those three words. Organic appearing messages. Like that should be their slogan, like DNC, organic appearing messages. That are fucking corporate focus grouped and funded by billionaire oligarchs. Organic appearing messages. And posts on social media. We then convey that to the influencers who take that into their own words, continued Jeff. I mean, we all knew this. People documented these people all saying the same thing. It was clear they were all reading from the same script. So anyway, but this was not rocket science. I'm glad that no disrespect. I'm glad Li Fong brought the receipts. Like he's confirming what we all already knew. We then test those videos and see what needs to be boosted, she added, referencing paid media efforts to amplify specific TikTok videos or favorite streamers. These are all like marketing cunts that I used to work with. They're the worst people alive. Fuck these people. I'm so glad they lost, and this company should go out of business, but they're clearly going to be able to like suck money out of some other bullshit entity like APAC. The lofty promises of message mastery, however, often fell short. Way to Win directly financed a series of clunky YouTube shows and liberal identity politics-oriented social media skits designed to bring voters out to support the Harris campaign and Democrats more broadly. There's little evidence that such measures moved any significant numbers of voters during an election in which Democrats lost historic levels of support from key constituency groups. The youth vote, Latinos, and Black men swung significantly to Trump last year, upending decades of voter patterns. And the arrogance of these marketing cunts is they put out a proposal like, look at all the hard work we did for this loss, guys. Hire us. Oh, it's just so beautifully out of touch. It's so fucking beautifully out of touch. That's it. And organic appearing messages. The Democratic Party, organic appearing messages. Just imagine like one of those pharma commercials with like soft music and like people prancing through fields. The Democratic Party, organic appearing messages. Brought to you by corporate donors. Ilana Glazer, a comedian who starred in the Comedy Central show Broad City, received Way to Win funding for a series of election videos called Microdosing Democracy. So again, if you don't think Kyle Kulinski and Crystal Ball and all these dumb internet cunts who just blindly support the Democratic Party aren't getting this money, you're insane. There's 1,000% and more. I would put money on the fact that Kyle Kulinski and fucking Crystal Ball and all those stupid Democratic mouthpieces are getting this money from, maybe even from this company. But through a company like this, they are totally getting money. They might even have been part of this campaign. I wouldn't doubt it if they were part of this as well. But it's very obvious. You can smell this on these people. It's so obvious. Oh, Qatar's funding people. No, the fucking Democratic Party is funding people. Anyway, Ilana Glazer, the totally authentic comedian who did Microdosing Democracy, in which she half-heartedly endorsed Harris as she lighted a spliff of marijuana. Why didn't that work? I wonder. Another TikTok and Instagram series backed by the donors called Gaydar featured interviews quizzing people on the streets of New York City about gay culture trivia with a little election-related content. Way to Win also funded a caravan with an inflatable IUD to Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Raleigh, St. Louis, and other locations. The tour, which featured content creators producing posts along the way, was designed to bring attention to claims that Trump would ban contraceptive devices, which, again, is complete nonsense. But just what I just read there, and they did a van tour with an inflatable IUD. That is the kind of thing that happens when you give a bunch of dumb cunts at a marketing company a bunch of money and they go, oh, what can we do? Oh, I know. Let's do a van tour with an inflatable IUD. We'll totally be like, we'll do like Twitter pictures of it on like little videos and stuff. It'll be amazing, you guys. That'll be 3 billion. That's, oh my God. This just like, I could feel myself throwing up in my mouth as I read this the first time. Anyway, to keep going here. In an apparent attempt to boost Harris's support among black men, Way to Win directly funded a series of YouTube interview-style talk shows called Watering Hole Media. Oh my God. So this is from Lee's article, but content highlights. This is like some of the people that they paid, that they gave money to, this company, Way to Win. And then one of our invited creators was the only creator invited to speak on the DNC stage, and one of the very few creators who secured an interview with VP Kamala Harris. So here it is. Like they totally just like everyone, they only allowed people that their marketing agencies paid to even talk to the candidate. It's completely stage managed. The entire thing was, they spent millions and upon millions of dollars on this fake nonsense. And look at these people, like who, Harry Sisson, we all knew, but a couple of these people are ridiculous. And again, I guarantee you, all the people like the Kyle Kalinskis are getting this money too. They're just not on this slide. They're in the mix. There's just no doubt about it. So let's finish this off. I heard a brother say, this is about Watering Hole Media, by the way. So just to go, they directly funded a YouTube series group called Watering Hole Media. And this is from Watering Hole Media that was designed to influence black men, by the way. I heard a brother say to me, man, I don't know. I was going to be excited. I didn't know I was going to be excited when Kamala was selected, said Jeff Johnson, a managing director with the lobbying firm Acturn LLC, who worked as a host for Watering Hole Media series Tap In. One brother said, I'm not even fully sure why, continued Johnson. No, seriously, he said. When I look at her, though, she reminds me of my aunt. And I said, yes. So there is this communal piece. The discussion taped at the Democratic Convention in Chicago last August buzzed around the through line from the Black Panthers to the Nation of Islam to Harris's nomination, suggesting her candidacy represented another moment in radical black politics. The Way to Win sponsored media group sponsored many similar discussions attempting to buoy the Harris candidacy with appeals to racial identity politics. Despite the well-funded efforts, few tuned in. The 7 video programs produced at the DNC collectively garnered less than 1,000 views. One video had less than 40 viewers. They're putting up my numbers. And just to remind you again, one last time, this information came from a deck that this company put out to sell itself after they fucking lost an election. Massively. Questions have mounted over the campaign spending decisions from Harris and her supporting organizations. The Harris campaign and her super PAC spent over $1.5 billion in the last months of the campaign, with much of the money flowing to consultants and media advertising. The people I was just telling you about. Alex Cooper, who hosted Harris for an interview on her Call Her Daddy podcast, was baffled about why the campaign spent about $100,000 on a cardboard temporary studio set that wasn't that nice. Others have raised similar concerns about payments to Oprah Winfrey's production firm. And that, my friends, is how you faceplant after spending millions of dollars on marketing in a goddamn election cycle. So I want to show you Lee did some press after publishing this article, and he appeared on one of yours and my favorite shows, which happens to be, of course, Glenn Greenwald. And one of the things he talked about was, what this kind of shows about the Democratic model right now and moving forward, and what they need to do if they want to be relevant ever again. Let's jump in right here around 10 minutes, because I think this is where they really start talking about the stuff I want to discuss.
Like, this is inherent in the Democratic Party, or is this something that they can kind of finally break out of?
It's hard to say. I feel that part of the problem for the Democrats is that, for whatever reason, and it's a complex problem of both special interest group politics and the kind of pathologies of modern liberalism, perhaps, and kind of the class makeup of the party. But for whatever reason, the Democrats tend to have non-competitive primaries. Democrats kind of fall in line, their voters and their interest groups and the kind of their leadership behind the kind of pre-chosen candidates that are part of the party echelon, the leadership. And you just don't see that in the last 20 years of the Republican Party. After the George Bush years, you had these really kind of chaotic Tea Party primaries where dozens and dozens of Republicans on the national and state level were, the Republican establishment was challenged and unseated, and you had this kind of upheaval of voters. And yes, there were, interest groups involved there, but at least these were competitive primaries with a lot of fierce combat between candidates, and that changed the makeup of Congress, and it kind of laid the groundwork for a upheaval by Donald Trump for him to take on the Republican establishment and really.
So what Lee just described, and it's so brilliant that he laid this out the way he did, because it's not something that I really thought much about, but it's the truth. There was populist upheaval in both parties, and Steve Bannon talked about this in his debate with David Frum, which I talk about all the time, the Monk debate. But he talked about how populism is going to uprising in both parties and major parties in the U.S. And the only real question is it going to be Bernie Sanders or Trump populism? Well, the answer was Trump, because the Democrats stage manage their primaries. They wouldn't allow populism to come up through their ranks. They stopped it from happening. But what Lee is pointing out is that on the Republican side, yeah, there were some interests involved and stuff, but they had these disruptive primaries, and the nature of Congress changed as a result of that, with the Tea Party and all that kind of stuff, where you had guys like Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie and these kind of more like libertarian Republicans, this more libertarian Republican upheaval, and the Republican Party changed, and all the donors, the fucking dick pigs, the Steve Schmitz, the Rick Wilsons, went to the Democrat side. And that party carefully still does the same thing and stage manages their candidates, as they did with Biden and Harris and Hillary Clinton and, before that, and John Kerry and, Barack Obama, and that's, they're not willing to let go of the consultant class who I just described. Sorry, I just smacked my mic, but the consultant class who makes all this money, who has released this deck to sell their fucking influencer marketing that lost the election, those people are who run the Democratic Party, not the voters. And that more than anything is why they lost this big in this cycle. And I think that's the fantastic point that Lee Fong is making here, but I'll let him continue.
Kind of take his message to voters, and just like the market, the kind of consumer marketplace, the business marketplace, the best products and businesses tend to rise because you have that competitive atmosphere. That's a helpful dynamic in democracy as well. If we're going to have this kind of winner take all two-party system, which is a really terrible system, but if we're going to have the system, the way that Democrats can compete with Republicans is to open things up and allow more competition and encourage their voters and kind of the powers that be to allow open primaries and real competition. As long as you have these kind of pre-chosen candidates. And
when they do that, what happens? They did that. And then Bernie Sanders won. And then they went, oh, fuck, we can't have that. And now that they lost so big, they're out here trying to pretend that they give a shit about Bernie Sanders now. I want to show you, just as a quick sidebar, what happened this morning. Because yesterday, Bernie Sanders did a massive rally. And I thought this is just a good example of how hilariously out of touch and stupid the Democrats are in real time. But so here's a tweet I put out this morning about what's going on. So Victor Shee here, who's one of the people I guarantee you paid this money by Ways to Win or whatever the fuck that company's called. This guy's one of those influencers, I'm sure. He's one of those like blind Democrat dick pigs. But here he goes. What a photo. Thousands in Los Angeles to see Bernie Sanders right now. There's something happening. Yeah, I'll tell you, there's something happening. All right. It's called Neil Young. That's what's happening. So check this out. My next tweet up here. Joan Baez and Neil Young. This is why this Bernie Sanders rally is massive. And like I said in my tweet, it's not about it. It's the same thing that Kamala did during her campaign, where they got Megan Thee Stallion and Beyonce, and they're like, look at this massive rally. Oh my God, this rally is huge. And it's like, yeah, because there's a bunch of people there to see these like famous artists you brought out for free. That's why they're not there because they're like, they think Bernie Sanders is like going to do anything or is saying anything of value whatsoever, because he's not. They're there for Neil Young and Joan Baez and Young the Giant or whatever other dumb fucks are still supporting Bernie Sanders as if he's doing anything besides sheep herding people back into a corporate party that pays people to pretend they like it. Back to Lee.
This lack of competition, you have candidates who are not prepared to make the case to a general election. And for Kamala Harris, she was really a creature of the machine. She was very close to the Gettys and the kind of power brokers in San Francisco, and they kind of chose her to run against an unpopular.
So Lee Fong, quick side note before then we're almost done here, but Lee Fong is from the Bay Area. He's a San Francisco based reporter. So there's no one better for him to talk about Kamala Harris than Lee Fong, because he came up in the area where she came up. He knows a lot about her. But the point he makes here is actually really good. He's like, if they had marketed Kamala Harris authentically, she kind of has an interesting story. And I mean, I'll be the first to admit she's a pretty woman. Like I think she's attractive. Like definitely would smash. Like whatever. But I'm just saying, the point that he makes here is a good one, in the sense that she does actually have kind of an interesting story. And if they had actually been authentic about it and not tried to like carefully stage manage and manufacture this perception about her, they might have had a better chance of actually winning if she had gone on Joe Rogan, for example. Anyway.
Popular district attorney, and they kind of shoot her in, and she was again kind of chosen by the powers that be in the California Democratic Party to rise up through the ranks. That's not a very healthy atmosphere for grooming and finding the best candidates to run for president, because it is a very difficult job, and finding candidates who can connect with voters in a visceral way. That doesn't happen from folks who are just chosen from a back room by party elders.
So that's a great point that Lee makes there. And I want to close out by, there's this clip that I like to show a lot of Lawrence O'Donnell, where he's talking about the Democratic Party, but there's a longer form version of that clip. And in the longer form version of this clip, the guy explains how the Democratic Party works. And I just want to show this as kind of like a bookend to that Lee Fong report about the fake influencer campaigns that they've run and all the money they spread around, carefully stage managing and scripting their message. because this just sums it up well how they are and have always been. So listen to this. This is Lawrence O'Donnell talking about the corporate Democratic Party.
If you want to pull the party, the major party that is closest to the way you're thinking, to what you're thinking, you must show them that you're capable of not voting for them.
Because the way the Democratic Party is run now for
Listen to
quite
this.
a number of presidential cycles is they pick a nominee in a kind of half-assed process that doesn't really represent much of anybody. And then they tell everybody to just shut up. Don't bring up anything that will complicate life for your nominee. You know he's not for you on this. Why badger him? He's not going to be for you for reasons that you don't understand, but are good reasons. Shut up. Turn off your brains.
If you don't show them you're capable of not voting for them, they don't have to listen to you. I promise you that. I worked within the Democratic Party. I didn't listen or have to listen to anything on the left while I was working in the Democratic Party because the left had nowhere to go.
And that, my friends, is the end of the show. I'm going to go to the comments real quick. What we got here? I keep hoping Trump, after getting control of Palestine from Israel, gives it to the Palestinians. This bit where Kim pointed out that Trump is negotiating with Iran rekindles that hope. Yeah, I mean, listen, like I said, I'm not naive. There are a lot of people around Trump that are influencing his decisions, specifically his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who I think are probably don't have the best interests of the American public in mind. When I could be wrong about that, but we'll see. I mean, it's still, I think the Dave Smiths of the world were still correct in the sense that Trump was and is the lesser of two evils. If Kamala Harris had been elected, I mean, Avril Haines was Joe Biden's DNI person before Tulsi Gabbard. Look up Avril Haines and who she is. She's a complete fucking, product of the deep state with connections to the foreign country that currently runs our foreign policy. And at least Tulsi Gabbard is critical or, is putting people you've already seen two examples of her going against the foreign lobby that runs the government with the Daniel Davis appointment and, this putting a dove to brief Trump on Iran. So anyway, I've been on for a very long time. I thank you all so much for coming on and listening to me rant. I hope that I provided something of value, and I greatly appreciate you all. Like and subscribe, all that good shit. And I will be here on Sundays. I would like to get on here a lot more. And, if I can, I will. But the one thing you can pretty much bet on, maybe not every Sunday. I think I missed last week. I did miss last week, but I will be on Sunday. And I'm going to try to start getting these clips up again. And again, I appreciate y'all sticking with me. I've been doing this a little over a year now, and I feel like I'm getting better, and I really enjoy it. So again, I'm very grateful for y'all tuning in, and let's take it out today with one of my favorite musical pieces for you. This is your boy Matt Taibbi colluding with Russia. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week or sooner.
Colluded with Russia. I wrote a book about it. Trump colluded with Russia. I wrote a book about it. Matt Taibbi is a bad person. Trump colluded with Russia. Trump colluded with Russia. Matt Taibbi is a bad person. I wrote a book about it. Matt Taibbi is bad. Jeff Girth. Trump colluded with Russia. I wrote a book about it. Trump colluded with Russia. I wrote a book about it. Anti-EB is a bad person. Trump colluded with Russia. Trump colluded with Russia. Anti-EB is a bad person.